All right, so we are live here. We have our special guest, Chris Corella, GM Chris.
GM guys. I was
Yeah.
uh, I was saying in our prep that we don't have a nounish greeting. We still use GM, but we sort of need our own code word for when a bunch of nounish people are in a room, so that we can identify each other.
We do. GM guys. Happy to have you, Chris.
Yeah, GM Mike, welcome. Good to have you as well. We've got about an hour today to jam with Chris about Purple. Purple is a DAO built using Nouns Builder. I believe it was one of the first, if not the first, Chris. When did you start Purple DAO?
Yeah, so we were the first. I want to say it was October of last year, towards the end of the year. We launched as soon as it went to mainnet, and so we had been playing around on testnet. We tested heavily actually and provided feedback to Zora as they were working on it, and then as soon as they were live, we were ready to deploy. We had all of our assets, we had everything agreed upon. So yeah, we launched. We were first.
Nice. Very nice. Look at this treasury, man. You guys are loaded. You got 43 ETH.
Yeah, it's pretty good and actually a little surprising because I didn't. You actually can't have much expectations when you launch these builder DAOs on what your treasury will be. And so, if you look at maybe our last couple of tokens, they were sold at somewhere in like the 0.15. This one here, 0.12. Oh, it's still live. But yeah, it's like now in that realm, which is what I was hoping for when we launched it. And I was just going off of like the Lil Nouns price. I should state very upfront, I actually do not care about the token price at all. And but I do care about the treasury. And so obviously the price that the token sells for starts to stuff your treasury. And yeah, and this is pretty good to go to the first couple of ones because the first few bids were between 1 and 3 ETH, and it was just very surprising to me. And so we actually built that treasury up pretty quickly, and then I would say I don't know if this is a universal rule of builder DAOs, but certainly we saw this with Purple, and it's interesting, which is like the first 10 all went for more than 1 ETH, and then people really wanted to give a number below 10, and then after that, the price just started to trail down. I think with like the growth and the dilution of the token.
Yeah, I'm glad you started out there because actually I'm exactly the same way in terms of how I think about liquidity and token price. With I'm pretty involved in MF or Builder DAO, and the
Yeah.
same thing where I do not expect to ever have any liquidity on my tokens. I want to use them for voting. And I think for people newer to the ecosystem, yeah, you're going to see these early bids, but there does always seem to be kind of this trailing off where the token price goes down, and I worry that that's a really bad experience for some people who are newer. And I think really the only antidote is to talk about it and be clear about what you're building and why, and make that obvious to people.
Yeah, I'll tell you where I think it makes a lot of sense, and then maybe where it doesn't make sense. Where it doesn't make sense is certainly when you're at token 100, and it's once you scroll through the screen, you can still see like token 25, the price is pretty high. Um, but where it doesn't make sense is yeah, once you have 100 tokens and then the price is sort of trended down, then you're the guy who bought in for 3 ETH and whatever token five. Where it makes a lot of sense is the first 20 people. What are we up to here? Like Purple 30 or so. The first 25 or so people just have an outsized influence because you're trying to figure out what is this thing, what are our values, like how to build this whole thing. And so that's where I think it does make sense for like the people who ape in early have a lot of control of the shape of the DAO. And then yeah, I always tell people like I'm just a member now. I hold 2 tokens personally, like that I bought at auction. There's people who hold more tokens than me. I have no real special powers in this DAO, but I was there in the beginning and was able to sort of set some of the norms and cultural standards, and just kind of be the kind of the spiritual guy early on. This that you're looking at here on OpenSea, this Purple DAO, that is not us. but it is like a commemorative NFT that someone minted, a Farcaster user, just to sort of commemorate that Purple had launched. And and it was pretty cool. Like a bunch of people look for Sequerel.eth is mine. But yeah, like a bunch of people had just celebrated us on Farcaster, which felt really nice.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like, what made you guys decide that you wanted to create this? Like, what sparked the creation of the DAO? Just the overall mission to kind of build on top of Farcaster? Was there any other like conversation or something that kind of led up to this, or were you guys waiting on Builder DAO to deploy to jump in? How did it kind of come about?
Yeah, cool. The origin story. There are like multiple levels here, but for those who haven't tried Farcaster or know what Farcaster is a decentralized social network. There's a client app called Farcaster, the Farcaster app, and it's really good and super polished. And for all of the decentralized social stuff happening right now, the Farcaster one just feels the most professional and clean and easy to use, and it just feels really great. And then the second part of that is the Farcaster protocol, which is the open protocol that the client is built on. And now let me just fast forward. There are multiple other clients built on top of Farcaster, which we can talk about. But to zoom back out, so I joined Farcaster, and it's special because it's actually not open. It's a private beta, and to get an invite, you had to DM on Twitter the founder, Dan Romero. He would give you an invite and say you would get in. And so he was the first kind of filter of who could join Farcaster. And so as soon as you enter, the quality is so high. It's just kind of all of the people who really love Ethereum. It's totally the Ethereum community, and that means a lot of things. But it's different than like the Tezos community, say. And so it's like these Ethereum lovers, people who have been in crypto for a while, also new people, but recognizable names. And then the conversation is just like very elevated. And whereas I think on Twitter you are rewarded for dunking on people, right? So you're kind of on Twitter rewarded for being a funny jerk, and like you can like not think about someone's feelings. You can just straight make fun of them. On Farcaster, you're rewarded for just intellectual dialogue, positivity, not like positivity, but like techno optimism, I would say. And there's a lot of people building on there and just trying to support each other. So that sort of lays the groundwork for what Farcaster is. The crazy thing, when I joined them pretty early, I don't really know what my user number is. I know I'm over the first 1,000. By the time I got there, which again, pretty early, there was already so much building on top of the protocol. It reminded me of like those early days of Twitter when they had a really good free API and people were just building all kinds of creative stuff. And so, the builder in me was hooked into Farcaster for that. And then maybe like the thinker in me was hooked into Farcaster for the social conversation. But so anyway, so all this great stuff. And then I actually just started with a cast. And so a cast is maybe the Farcaster version of a tweet. And I just kind of casted like, hey, we should start a DAO to fund all this amazing builder activity that's happening. In fact, I don't remember the first tweet, but I was like, very like, we should create a Namish DAO to fund this stuff. And I kind of knew Builder DAO was happening. I only knew it like through following the Nouns Discord at the time, and I knew something was happening. I didn't really totally know. And then so I just had a cast. A bunch of people replied and liked it. And then Osama, who is one of the other co-founders of Purple, he like immediately hit me up on Telegram and was like, hey, let's do this, And so that really motivated into a few of us in this Telegram channel thinking about, okay, cool, can we launch a DAO to support the Farcaster ecosystem? And we were very transparent and in public, and that Telegram group grew to like 100 people or like, more, 100 plus people. And so while all this was happening, Jacob, who is a user of Farcaster, Jacob from Zora, he reached out and said like, hey, we're building Nouns Builder, and we think this would be perfect. And, you guys should consider it. And here's the link. It's all on testnet right now. And that is just sort of the motivation of it all. And then And then it just kind of spiraled from there. We were organizing in this big Telegram group, and then Jacob just hit us up when it went on mainnet and said, "Hey, we're ready when you guys are." And so then we launched it. So that's sort of the origin story. I do think maybe on the page here it talks about the mission of Purple is to proliferate and expand the Farcaster protocol and the ecosystem. And that was decided, very upfront, like this is what we're doing. Again, had no idea that we would have any sort of real treasury to work with, but I even thought a couple of ETH would be fun to be able to fund some of these builders. And so that's it. Then we launched, and the very first thing we did was a prop house round to retroactively fund the people who had done all the amazing work that inspired us to start this even in the first place.
Very cool. That's what I was going to ask. How did you fund builders before the DAO? Was everybody just kind of building for the sake of the platform, and then you retroed them, or was there other funding from somewhere else that was kind of funding these guys?
Yeah, there was no funding. It was all people hacking for the love. That's sort of like another thing that just sort of drew me to it. Farcaster is just like this really interesting, unique place, and I think a lot of builders, as soon as they find it, are interested, and then they look at the protocol and they realize, oh, I can build anything on here. This is completely permissionless. I don't need the Farcaster. The company behind Farcaster is called Merkle Manufacturing, and so people realize, like, oh, I don't need Merkle's permission for any of this stuff. It's a completely permissionless protocol, and people just started building stuff. Now, fast forward a year, I think Farcaster's been around. There are companies, or there are people building companies on top of Farcaster, and so I don't know their funding. I do think there is some VC money into some of these companies, but it's become like a real builder platform where people are sort of making a bet. Yeah, this is a great one. You're looking on the screen right now. Greg, who I think he got a Noun Explorer grant, but he recently got a Noun Explorer grant, but he has been an ENS fellow for a while, and he was just building tons of stuff early on. Here, list this a bunch of stuff, and he won this prop house round. I'll call out one thing that I really love. He's just built so much stuff, and I don't know if people know Greg. He's just built so much stuff in the ecosystem in general. In fact, I think his first prop house was to make his first prop house win was with Little Nouns, where he sort of did the easy to use Little Nouns ENS system. But one of the things that was listed in this prop house is FarDrop, and so I use FarDrop a lot. It's just listed under Greg here, FarDrop.xyz. So what FarDrop will do is, you can pop me in C Corella. You can pop any name in. It will create a whitelist of all of your followers, right? An allow list of all of your followers, and then you can copy it to your clipboard. And so that's it. So now I have a list of all my followers and their wallet addresses. And so I use this in my art to create stuff that only my followers can mint. Usually it's a free mint for my followers. And it's just like, it's such a cool example of what's possible in Web3, just the composability nature of it. It really shows up, I think, the power of Farcaster, which is like, now as a user on this network, you have control of your network graph. Like on Twitter, it's so hard. Like, you would never be able to airdrop. Yeah, so the first thing I did actually was airdrop them all of my followers. And then moving forward, I did kind of free mints for them. But on Twitter, it's like you have a bunch of followers. On YouTube, you maybe have a huge channel, but you have no real connection to those users. And here on Farcaster, it's like you can just directly grab the wallet address from the protocol itself. So anyway, just an example of like, these are cool hacky things that, in this case, Greg just had this creative idea and he built it, and lots of artists on the Farcaster network use it in the way I described.
Do you have a favorite follower here on this list?
Wait, what's that?
Do you have a favorite follower here on this list?
Vitalik follows me.
Oh.
So I don't know if he's my favorite, but that's kind of. You got Dan, who's the founder. Dan follows everyone, but still, he's maybe my favorite follower. And yeah, I got a follow from Vitalik, and
yeah, I know.
Even just to think about like the quality of the people on the network, it's like Vitalik, Chris Dixon, P. Mark is on there, Fred Wilson. These are people I follow or follow me. Balaji just started. Balaji's been there since day one, but he's just started using it pretty heavily in the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
Very cool. So I guess this is a little bit of a good segue into like just the builder tool and like building on top of that. And like I see here, like a lot of your builders are building features for on top of the Farcaster protocol, right? So I guess what do you think is missing right now from like the builder tool? Like, do you think there's a lot of room for builders to build on top of builder, to build utilities and different things, on top of it? What do you think about that? What's missing?
Yeah, that's a good one. So one, I think it's an incredible tool. I think it really kind of democratizes the ability to create Nouns DAOs, which frankly was quite difficult before Nouns build. So it's really great, and you see that I think in the many DAOs that are being created on it. They're just kind of all over the place. So I would say one, we need more DAOs. So this is not necessarily the tool itself, but it's like I just encourage people to play with it, and if you have an idea, just go for it. It's actually pretty low risk to do this stuff, which I could talk about why also. So that's one. I do think there was in the very first Builder DAO round, there was in the very first Builder DAO prop house, there was a round for custom front end websites. And I still think we need more of those. There's actually like a few good ones came out of that round and have subsequently been funded by proposals, but there isn't really like a Squarespace version of creating your Namish DAO homepage. And so, that's a really great one. There are, the interesting thing about like being in the kind of on Builder DAO is like you have access to all of these Namish tools. And so, prop house is the one I've just mentioned many times, but it would be great to see like just Agora for these things. The things that already exist in the Noun ecosystem, many of them already do support some Builder DAO stuff, but then all of those tools are super relevant. So all of the stuff being just pitched to nouns, big nouns or little nouns, is all kind of relevant for this stuff. I think like I personally find voting difficult currently, not the voting, but the tracking of voting is difficult. So who voted is not a thing that's like on the Builder DAO website really easily yet. I think there's like a lot of room around delegation because one of the things I'd like to talk about is like who joins these Builder DAOs or who joined Purple. Oh, this is cool, and this is new, by the way, that you're showing, which is great.
So this is our front end. This is MF for Builder DAO.
Oh,
we saw
okay, cool. You have a custom front end.
We've got our own front end here, so we should just show quite easily where the votes are and the reasons.
Perfect. See that this is great. And then, I think just making delegation easy and obvious is I think the Agora team's doing that with Liquid delegation, but just in general, bringing that to Builder DAO would be great. And then I'll give you my actual biggest one and the biggest pain point. Just notifying people that stuff is happening is a unsolved problem, I think, like almost throughout the whole Namish ecosystem. And so I know it's like we had a vote recently. This is it, right? So vote 8. Here we go with about, let's just call this 30 people voted. We had about 80 people in the DAO probably at the time. And so I just think the other 40 people or 50 people didn't even know this was going on, right? And so we tweet about it, we cast about it, we use our Discord about it, but it's like those are not channels that reach everyone. And so I think like a really cool tool for the whole Builder DAO ecosystem and even the whole Namish ecosystem is like some better notification systems, whether that's like using something on chain like XMTP or just plain old email, so people get an email when a prop goes on chain. I think that would like solve a really key problem around governance and engagement and participation.
Yeah, an opt-in SMS or email would be great for
Totally.
each DAO that you're kind of in when something happens. I've been noticing that also. As soon as you join more than like 4 or 5 of these, it's very hard to kind of keep up. So maybe even something where you can monitor, voting from all the DAOs you're in one place.
Yeah, I think those things will be great.
Very cool. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask next, like what your biggest pain point was, and what features you would like to see. But that kind of answered it, which is
Yeah,
great. Yeah.
I have a good one. I have a good second one for which is not feature. It's not a feature thing, um, and speaks to maybe the origin of Purple. And yeah, again, being the first people to launch and build their DAO, in and of itself is not that interesting. Except I encountered a bunch of like I'll just like even encounter resistance. Like I just encountered a lot of people who didn't know what nouns was, and so I was coming into it from like I've been in Shark DAO since almost the beginning. Um, I was in I'm in Little Nouns. I just like have been around nouns governance for a while. Um, I learned a lot more about it all once I joined Purple and had to start defending um, some of the design decisions, which I think are amazing, by the way, but not everyone really understood them or thought they were amazing. And so one of the very first things was, just hitting a wave of Farcaster users. And Farcaster users are like very sophisticated Web3 crypto people who have been around for a long time. They've have been in other DAOs. There's lots of other DAOs in there. And then when we launched and we announced it, it was like I immediately realized, or at least learned, that lots of people in that demographic I just described had no idea what nouns is or how it works. All they knew is that nouns were selling for like 80 ETH, and they just kind of thought it was a bunch of rich people in a playground. They had no notion that like most of the funding goes to people, or at least a lot of the funding goes to people who aren't token holders. They had no notion of like, no, this is one of the very early criticisms was like, oh my God, this treasury is so big, Chris is just going to rug us all. And it was like, I had to like step back and sort of explain to people like, no, this treasury is a smart contract. It was only unlocked by proposals. It was like literally impossible for me to rug you guys, And what was surprising to me was that these were not normies, right? These were crypto people invested in Farcaster who just didn't really know how nouns worked. And then fast forward, so we had like a bunch of those early users, all very sophisticated crypto people, many of them not really familiar with that nouns, but like all super willing to lean in and learn more about it. And so there was a lot of like education to those people. And then even now, I think two separate things have happened now. One, there's more nounish stuff out there, and so people maybe have a better idea. But then two, we're grabbing all kinds of users. And so the first time a user has to vote, and they've only ever voted on Snapshot before, and they get asked to like pay gas to vote, and they like start the question like, why is this thing on chain? Like, why don't we all just use Snapshot? And so I think sort of a nounish problem at large is, and I do see such good efforts, and especially in the last couple of months around this, but really it's just educating people on like what is nouns. And some of that stuff focuses on like what is nouns. We're a brand, we're trying to be the next Disney or whatever, however people coach it, But then to me, nouns is actually like a series of smart contracts that anyone can use, and we could use more education around how they work, why on-chain DAOs are important, and just kind of all of the mechanics of this stuff and more education around it.
Yeah, why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Panda, I don't know if you have any follow-up questions with that, but I mean, that did kind of lead me into something I wanted to ask you. Maybe we could take a moment and you could think about it, or maybe you have an answer right away. But I just kind of wanted to know, like, in general, what you think nounish means.
Oh man, that is such a hard answer. And somewhere in my notes, I have like a 4156 quote that I always pull out. But yeah, I think let me take a moment to sort of collect some thoughts here.
Yeah, and what it means to you, and I think it's like a moving target as well, and changing sometimes, sure. Right? Like based on just a lot of different things, but yeah, kind of want to get different people's takes on that because it's been a big conversation recently.
Here's sort of I've made a contrarian take, but something I actually believe pretty deeply, and a lot of people in the nouns community believe like nouns is the novel. And you actually see it reflected in a lot of the builder DAOs. They have novels, and And you can see we're looking at a purple token right now. It is just a purple square. There are no noggles to be found. There's sort of no noggles in the whole sort of purple lexicon. But we do think of ourselves as like part of the nouns community, and we are quite nounish. And so I think of nouns as a type of organization, and so this type of organization is represented by the smart contracts that are deployed and all of the on-chain activity that makes this organization run. And so that is like one thing I often like come up against with other people in the nouns ecosystem, especially if they're thinking about doing builder DAO. They want it to look like a noun, or they want to use noggles. And I sort of encourage them to think bigger. And then they think, well, you have to have noggles to be nounish. And that's just something like I categorically reject. It's like, no, you can create a nounish organization that doesn't have noggles, but sort of embodies a lot of the spirit of nouns, which again, I think in the abstract, and like you said, a lot of things are changing, but what hasn't really changed is like in the abstract, it's like this is a fully on-chain DAO. It's a contract that's unlocked by proposals, and it's actually truly autonomous in that sense. And there are very few DAOs in existence, I think, that can stand up to the 3 letters. But like the nounish DAO or nouns as an organization type is totally an actual DAO. And so I think at the core, to me, that's what it is being nounish. It's like you have these smart contracts and you run your organization in this way. That's a very big, broad definition of nouns, and I leave room in there for people to use Builder DAO in whatever way they want. Commercial, non-commercial, like every sort of option should be explored with Builder DAO, and I think it all falls into that. Now, more traditionally, I think people talk about nouns, about WTF, as like what is nounish, and I like to think of that as like all of the things I just said about the organization, but then there's a bit of a altruistic attitude and spirit. Not that everything is charity, but that like everything has good intentions. Like it's a supporting of creative people trying to proliferate the meme, right? And so I'm on that side of what does it mean to be nounish? It's like, let's just do really cool stuff and make the world take notice and do it with good intentions, and be kind to each other as we do it, and like see what kind of change we can make in the process.
Love it. Love that definition. Really good. Really great, succinct meaning. And yeah, thank you for that kind of like explanation and story around it. It makes a lot of sense. And I'm with you there on the on that side of being nounish. Support builders to proliferate the meme and do good in the world. It sounds great. If we can all get
That's it. The other thing that my other take on it is, and I'll just tell you that I think we're not doing a great job at Purple right now, is like deploy the treasury. Like sometimes this is like another contrarian thing, although I get a lot of head nods, but people see the nouns treasury and they think success. Now, I'll often tell people, it's like, no, I'm looking at that treasury and I see failure. I see failure to deploy that cash into the hands of builders who are going to proliferate this meme, right? And which I truly believe that, and it was like from Purple from day one, I was trying to get us to zero as quickly as possible. It turns out it's not super easy. It's like Brewster's Millions. It's like there's only so much like floating icebergs you can buy. But so I think like deploy the capital, deploy the treasury is like kind of a core principle here. And I think more recently that is totally not a shared belief amongst the nouns holders.
That's wild because it's funny, you and I have never talked, Chris, but we've DM'd, but we've never talked live. But I am treating my participation in MF for Builder DAO exactly the same way as let's get our treasury out. And so we don't have nearly as much. You've got 43 ETH. And I think that highlights something important here, which is that Purple DAO is decentralized, right? You play no special role. You have a bunch of members. Everyone can contribute. So even though you might want to spend the treasury, that might not be what the rest of your Purple DAO members want, right?
Right. Correct. Yeah, I do think like in our very last proposal, which passed, was to buy a Builder DAO token, and the thinking around that is we use Builder DAO. We should have some say in the governance of the platform. The argument against that was, well, you can look at our mission statement. We're here to proliferate Farcaster. So why are we buying Builder DAO token? We're splitting our focus a little bit. Are we really going to vote on these other proposals when we really should just be focused on those? And those were sort of the two sides. It was a pretty good debate. And then what do you do at the end? Let's throw it on chain. Then it passed. And I don't want to be in a DAO that passes everything 100%. There's a lot of those out there, a lot of DAOs. Less so the Namish ones, but there's just a lot of DAOs where everything passes 100%. And I would like ours to have at least some dissent,
Totally agree. What do you think is the optimal run rate for deploying Treasury? If you were in charge, how much of your purple Treasury do you think should be deployed?
Yeah, I would say that no one inside of Purple agrees with me on this, but I have been saying from day one we should be deploying 100% of it, and that at the end of every month we should be at 0 and just rebuild every month, and that should be our goal. Now, it's very hard to do that for a lot of reasons. It's just that maybe it's not even a realistic goal, but that's my thought. Is that the Treasury doesn't need to be holding funds; we need to be deploying funds and then just rebuilding them and redoing it. And so that was my pitch to the maybe first 10 token holders. Probably all 10 of them disagreed with me. And then people started talking about a split. Well, maybe we hold 60% of the Treasury and deploy 40, or maybe we hold 40 and deploy 60. We've never really come to an agreement on that, or even kind of had follow-up conversations about it. But that's just sort of my take, is all of this stuff should be deployed. I believe in what I think of as the Namish flywheel, which is you build a Treasury, you deploy that Treasury towards people doing really cool stuff. Lots of people see that cool stuff and they want to join your DAO, and so they buy the token and you rebuild the Treasury. And so, the longer you hold on to that Treasury, the less cool stuff you're doing, the less people you're reaching who want to now join this cool thing. So yeah, I just believe in kind of deploying all of it.
Wow. What a spicy take. I really like it. And you're having me kind of think about this a little bit differently, to be honest. With thinking of lol nouns right now, just in my mind. And yeah, I love your explanation of the flywheel and why it's okay to kind of go to 0, because it will continuously be rebuilt, and that should be more of the thought behind it. What can we do with this capital, rather than we need to save this because for a rainy day or whatever. How do you guys handle operating costs and admin costs? Is it just not something that exists? It's just kind of everybody's doing it for the love of the DAO right now?
It is. It feels like DAO members are just volunteers. And, a few people have done stuff that I need to take some time. In fact, I saw it up on your screen before, but we do have a newsletter that takes some time. And I'm always the first person. I just generally believe people should be paid for their time and their work. And so I'm usually the first person to say hey, let's retroactively fund this, or hey, you're going to build that bot, let me fund you for it. And every single person has denied accepting it so far. One person said as far as okay, you can give me that money, I'm just going to turn around and put it right back into the Treasury. And I thought all right, let's save the gas fees and not give you the money. And so again, I think it's just there's a love of Purple, there's a love of Farcaster. A lot of people are just sort of hacking around on the side around this stuff. And so it's another example. It's it's been hard to deploy the Treasury to the people inside of Purple who hold tokens, who are doing great work, because they just don't want to accept it. And so that's not really a problem I can solve. So that's it. So I do think in general, it makes sense that we would have a bunch of paid positions. Obviously the Nouns has that. I would be interested in a hacker in resident who just works on cool Farcaster stuff. But yeah, to date, admin and operations is all kind of volunteer. It's just, we use Charmverse to asynchronously communicate and collaborate on documents. And then we make pretty heavy use of Discord to try to organize things. And then, of course, we have Farcaster kind of as our megaphone.
I got to jump in and we got to go back to the Nounish flywheel, Chris.
Cool.
I want to really dig deep in this. And I actually, this is in one of my own Figma files. I copied this from you because I was making my own version for MFers. But can you take us through kind of what is this flywheel? It looks sort of simple, but it's kind of confusing. But where do you start on this flywheel?
Yeah, so you deploy your very first token through Builder DAO or however, and you're raising the treasury. And so there's a lot of like actual details here, which is like once you launch and then you have one member. Actually, when you were going through the token list, you can see I bought token like 7. I like couldn't even get into my own DAO that I just deployed because I was being outbid. But anyway, you start with such few people. There's so little you can really do, and so it was like until we even had 10 people, we didn't even have critical mass to like even decide what to do next. I think that probably changes from DAO to DAO, and depending on the vision you have going into it. But you raise treasury, right? You deploy your token. Our token is on a 24-hour cadence. So one new member comes every 24 hours. The treasury grows every 24 hours. And then I think as soon as possible, you want to fund cool shit. And so, that I think maybe is a factor of like, how big is your treasury? What is your vision for the fund cool shit? If you need 1 ETH and it takes you 15 tokens to get there, well, then that's how long you have to wait to get there. So what we did was, as soon as we had whatever we had, like 7 or 8 ETH, we decided to deploy 5 of it into Prop House. That was our fund cool shit. It was a round to retroactively fund the people who had already built cool things on top of Farcaster. It was like a signal to the Farcaster community that that's what we're here to do, is to fund these people. It was great for like proliferating because we were able to solicit, first of all, what was your favorite hack on or app on Farcaster. So very few people actually submitted their own prop. It was a lot of Farcaster users who had come and nominated someone else. And then, of course, the voting was all token holder only. But that was our first sort of fun, cool shit, right? And then we moved into that next box. Just using this example of Prop House, that was it. People saw us funding cool shit. They saw us funding their favorite builders. They saw us funding their favorite hacks. We had made the kind of statement that we want to fund future stuff too. It's not all retroactively funding. We want to fund cool things happening on Farcaster. That like created excitement, and then we had a whole crew of more people who wanted to join the DAO, right? And so then we move into the next box, and now we have new people want to join, people who didn't know that Purple existed, who maybe knew it existed but didn't really think it was for them, who didn't really quite understand what we were trying to do. But then it's like we built demand, and so those people then start to bid. We started seeing lots of new wallets bidding on the tokens, and then that moves back into your other square. And then boom, we're back to raising treasury because now people are buying tokens. And then, as I said, like you're trying to deploy that treasury for this flywheel. So you raise treasury and you try to do the next cool thing. Then more people outside of the DAO see it, and this flywheel just keeps going and going. I think Nouns kind of did a really great job of this in the first year for sure, and even beyond.
Where did you come up with this meme, or is this is Nounish and you've kind of created this visual? Can you talk to me more about this?
Yeah, it's funny because this is really interesting why I made this. So this is how I always thought it worked since I joined Shark DAO. And the vibe of the early Nouns were really like fun, cool shit. Like, cool, we got this money, let's fund cool stuff. Also, it's not super easy, but eventually they got, the Nouns started funding really cool stuff. And I just kind of internalized that this is how it works and this is why Nouns works. And I think this is literally what perpetuate the meme means. And I never really thought too much of it because, like, to me, it was like this was internalized. Like, this is how it works. We all think this way. And then I would say, when I published this maybe 1 or 2 months ago, actually it was twofold. It was one, to explain to Purple members and Farcaster users who haven't joined Purple yet how this works. Like, what is a Nounish DAO? What is this flywheel? Why should we deploy the treasury? But that was almost maybe a secondary point. The primary point is that there's just been a sentiment change inside of Nouns. And And it was actually quite shocking to me because there was a point where I just thought we all believed this flywheel chart and articulated it in different ways. And then some of the proposals were getting met with like, fierce opposition of, whatever. What is the ROI of this? Let me see more accounting. And I don't think that's separate from this flywheel because that stuff is valid and exists in this flywheel. But it was just so interesting. It was like, oh, we haven't all internalized this meme. We haven't all internalized this flywheel yet. And so I just like sort of put this out. I just made this and put this out there. And really at first it was like more intended for the nouns audience, but very quickly found a really good audience and the Purple Farcaster audience who were like, oh, that's what you guys are trying to do,
Have you made a version of this for Purple?
I have not. We've just used this because I think of it. I mean, it's totally the same, right?
Yeah, it is the same. I was just about to say that it's the same, right? It's being adopted for Purple. It doesn't say nouns anywhere on it. It's just a general the perpetuate the meme. I minted one of these also from you. I remember when I saw this.
Cool.
Like, this is great, man. This is great. This
cool.
Explains it perfectly and can be adapted many places. Like you said, it doesn't always have to have noggles on it or say nouns to be nounish.
Yeah, I think I guess there's another reason that I did this, which was I think the phrase "perpetuate the meme" is really powerful and like very underappreciated at how powerful it is. And I'll say on one hand, like DAOs need very strong mission statements, otherwise they sort of wander around aimlessly. And so for Purple, we totally like someone suggests something, let's make t-shirts. Someone pulls out the mission statement and like we kind of map it against the mission statement. Does this proliferate the Farcaster ecosystem? The answer might be yes for t-shirts. At least there's an argument for that. So that's actually has nothing to do with nouns. It's just DAOs need strong mission statements that people can get aligned around and can work autonomously and know that they are making an impact and working towards this mission statement. So separate from perpetuate the meme, that was one of the first things that as I really love DAOs. I'm in many of them. I built a DAO tool. It was one of the things that really struck me about nouns was once you understand perpetuate the meme, you understand the mission, and then it becomes very easy and powerful to know what kind of things to propose and what you can be doing as an individual to impact this mission statement. And so that's step one. So then step two, I think perpetuate the meme is just such a good one and a super powerful one. And it's very clear once you grok it. And when I was using that as when I was saying that about Purple very early on, I was getting a lot of pushback from Farcaster people, maybe like people who work professionally in branding or copywriting, just kept telling me how terrible perpetuate the meme is and that it doesn't really mean anything. And stop using, use human language. And like that was like another kind of, I think we can be so indoctrinated in like the nounish sphere that these things become like second nature. And so for me, it was like, oh, okay, for me, perpetuate the meme is the most clear thing. And for everyone else, they're telling me this is like just kind of mumbo jumbo. It doesn't mean anything. And so that was another kind of motivation into like, what is perpetuate the meme? I'll say the flaw in this, or at least the challenge people have, is that people still think memes maybe are things you post on Twitter with a box and some letters. And, like meme has this very kind of, a lot of people just have this connotation of what a meme is. Whereas like, I think of a meme as like the Enlightenment, the notion of like free will of a human, the fact that we have a nation state, that just do it for Nike is a meme. And so I think it's just kind of like our shared ideas that are not real. Like money is not real, but we have all agreed that it has value. To me, that's like the core of like, what is a meme? And so then, so that makes it a little bit more clear and more powerful. I'm like, what is perpetuating the memes? Like, let's perpetuate this idea of nouns and sort of all that means. And so anyway, these are the kind of the many factors that led into me drawing that chart, which was like, oh, people don't really understand perpetuate the meme. Oh, the vibe in the nouns community has changed a little bit. And then people are asking how deploying the treasury is going to increase the treasury. And so that all kind of consolidated into that chart.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a really good, succinct kind of take on the whole thing, and a really good explanation. Thank you for that.
Chris, we got to talk about SharkDAO.
Cool.
And what's interesting is I completely agree with your frame there about DAOs that have a clear proliferation mission work well as Nounish DAOs. And it seems to me like SharkDAO, the mission of Shark, what was the first kind of point of SharkDAO or mission?
Yeah, so I love SharkDAO. I don't have a lot to say about it. I will say that like I was not at all involved in sort of the creation of SharkDAO. I joined very early on, maybe as early as now too, and there was so much excitement around SharkDAO at that moment that it was like have you ever joined one of those Discords where like you just can't follow any conversation? That is what SharkDAO was like when it first launched. It was like a whole bunch of people from the internet descended into this Discord. They all funded treasury via Juicebox, and we were just trying to buy nouns, and it was just too much for me to keep up with, and so I sort of faded very early on, and then had maybe come back at the end of that year and thought the Discord was more sane, and then was able to contribute a little bit more. And so I think there's two things. One, SharkDAO as it exists today is not on the Nounish smart contracts, right? And so SharkDAO does not currently have daily auction. And so it's really interesting. It was kind of just, you can look at it different ways. I think of it as like we all just donated to the treasury. Yeah, I think a lot of other people felt like they invested into the treasury. And the goal, the very, very first goal was to buy noun number one. SharkDAO had won a noun on testnet. That was like where a lot of this nounish excitement happened. It was like, they pooled a bunch of funds on testnet while it was still all on testing. SharkDAO won. It was like for a big number, and then it's sort of that kind of moving forward went into like, well, let's do this. Let's do SharkDAO when it goes on to mainnet. So the very first goal was to buy the first noun, and maybe you could pull up the first noun. SharkDAO was winning, and then got outbid at the very last second. And so they had raised a bunch of capital, and they were just, their goal was to buy noun number one, and then we lost at the very last second. If we look at the bid history here, it's such wild numbers.
Is it this?
So yeah, maybe that is I think that probably is it. What a crazy number,
Yeah. I'm like laughing.
Yeah,
I'm just laughing at 569 ETH.
Yeah. And so they ultimately wound up with a big treasury that just kept growing as people wanted to get in. And SharkDAO grabbed down number two. And then here it is, Pina. And just like, I think that was just it. I think the goal initially was like, how many nouns can we buy? And knowing that there was like a governance perspective to it, like let's buy nouns and govern nouns and help shape nouns. And so I think that was maybe the initial mission was really like, I always thought of it as like, oh, we are a noun collector DAO. And then that pretty quickly turns into, there it is. We vote, that vote on Prop 1. And so it very quickly became like, okay, we're now a nouns collector and we participate in nouns governance. And it really was, SharkDAO has 6 nouns. And so, five nouns on mainnet. And so for a while, there was like a lot of influence over the whole noun experiment, right? Because we have a bunch of votes. Fast forward today when there are so many tokens and so many holders who have so many more than SharkDAO, it's still meaningful to hold that many nouns, but it's like, it's a little bit like what I said before, which is, the first 20 tokens for Purple went for a premium because you wound up having a lot of influence over the shape of the DAO. And I feel like that was also the case of SharkDAO, which was like, we had so many of the first 20 that we were able to like help shape it and set the vibe. And so that was like the purpose of SharkDAO, I would say in the beginning, was collecting nouns, participating in governance, and supporting builders in the space. I think what's interesting about SharkDAO and have a lot of the very early Nownish people, um, a lot of them have just gone on to do cool projects. Certainly, Joshua Fisher did the glasses for kids prop and pulled that off really successfully, and that's been a really a banner project. And then Sasquatch has the esports team. Goldie is an original member of SharkDAO, who's like very involved in Nouns, of course. And so like a lot of the people from the Nouns, from the SharkDAO ecosystem, sort of went off to do their own sort of Nownish projects and had less time for SharkDAO as a result.
Yeah, that's I think a common experience that a lot of these Nounish sub DAOs have, where it's like you're almost like a minor league baseball team. You bring up the prospects, and then when they can go off and build for Nouns, they kind of leave you in the dust.
Yeah, or like it's like even just the practical aspect of that is like when you are running the esports team for Nouns, like all of a sudden your time is different. Your time management is totally different, and you certainly have to treat that proposal and that money, as the highest priority, and so you have to prioritize other things, for sure. Now the SharkDAO just being raised on Juicebox meant that we have a token, and so the token has a price. Although there is currently no liquidity, which is a different topic. But yeah, and so people were trading the tokens, and there was a price around those tokens, and I have like I don't know 4 million Shark, which is like doesn't put me in the top 20 or anything. Just like there were just a lot. There's just a lot of tokens. It was really my point there. But we had no way to continue to replenish the treasury, and so as soon as maybe there were multiple ways that you could participate in the Nouns ecosystem as a fractional owner, or maybe the price had come down, or whatever it may be, it's like SharkDAO has a challenge like raising more money through Juicebox. Now, SharkDAO was created basically the same day Nouns was created, so it's not a surprise that we didn't use the Nounish smart contracts for that. But then when you saw NARS and Little Nouns and these people sort of innovating on those, this pre-builder DAO, but people still kind of using at least some of those mechanics, then you start to realize like, oh, this is probably the sustainable way to raise funding for DAO. First of all, period, but second of all, for the Nouns ecosystem.
Yeah, but I do think there's going to be a lot more innovation, and particularly with Cadence. I think that can have just a monster effect, because you guys have Purple DAO is a 1-day cadence, right? Lil Nouns 15 minutes. MF for Builder DAO were 69 minutes. But I still think there's 12 hours, 4 hours, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's completely unexplored almost.
I have like a few maybe ideas or things I think other people should do, which is I would love to see a Builder DAO launch with its end date 90 days from now. And so it's only, it could be a 1-a-day auction. You choose the cadence, let's just say a 1-a-day auction, and the auction pauses in 90 days. And so there's only really 90 tokens to get into this DAO. And so I think that's like a super interesting constraint, that these things don't actually have to go on forever. You can just kind of raise a group of 90 people to do something cool. Maybe you want to make art or buy art. And then the interesting thing is like, there's like, you just know there are 90 tokens. There's like a cool maybe game mechanic time constraint happening there. And then ultimately you can vote to extend the length of the auction, because the smart contract is fully upgradable. But I would love to see that, which is like, your ambition is that we're just trying to get 90 people in a DAO. It's a 90-day project, and then the auctions close, and then we have this small team and this treasury to work with. I think there's like really interesting. It's just such an interesting experiment, and you could really shorten that and say like, hey, it's going to be 20 people, first 20 people in, then we're going to lock the contracts and then decide what to do next. And then like, there's interesting incentives at play there. I have been thinking heavily about, so I make art, I'm an artist, I sell NFTs, I do all the things, free mint them, airdrop them. And I've always kind of wanted that whole experience to be a DAO. I have this idea. In fact, I for Builder DAO Prop House Round One, I sort of put this idea out there in the DAO incubator. I didn't vote for my own prop, which just shows you that I think there's a lot of great stuff in there, but I just wanted to like mint this idea and put it out there. And so my idea was like, you just create an artist, like a Banksy-like figure, and it's actually completely controlled by the DAO. This is a little bit before people started doing the drops through the DAO. But I was thinking of that. It's like, oh, the smart contract address for this artist is actually the DAO's treasury, and we all decide together what the projects are. And I had some goal of like, let's get shown at Art Basel next year, which is a little bit of a spin on Perpetuate the Meme. And then I was hoping you would get a bunch of art people or people interested in art or from the art world to like join this DAO and manage this artist together. And so that's interesting. So that's there's like a lot of I would say one advice for people starting to think about launching these DAOs. They're like a ton of work, and so I don't really have the time and effort, especially with Purple, to like run this whole second DAO. But then thinking about that, I would like to do this one day. I'm like, oh, I can set up a Namish auction with maybe a 1 day length, like be very low key about it, buy my own token, so be the only owner, and then I can release my art through this DAO through proposals, which I'm going to vote yes on myself. And then when I was ready to kind of bring in a group of people to help manage the art and the artists and sort of the whole meme of it, then you could turn on the auction and you have a bunch of art already minted from this treasury address. So anyway, I think there's just back to your point. I think there's just so much experimentation that needs to happen, and which even leads back to when you first asked what could be better about Nouns.build. And what I really think is like it's a pretty good tool. We just need lots of experiments and lots of people trying lots of different things, from serious to playful to crazy. All of that like experimentation should happen. And then furthermore, that's just where I think we are in the DAO space. It's like we always say we're very early. It's just very true. And with DAOs especially, and what I love about DAOs is like we can speed run human organization. This stuff is really hard to do in like the real world. But we can kind of like speed run these different ways to do it. You do it like Nouns, or you do it like Juicebox, or there's a million different sort of structures for the organizations if we think about like the smart contracts and the tools. But then also like what can the organization do? It's like, can the local coffee shop on the corner be a DAO where its members are part of the owners? I just think there's just so much experimentation that needs to happen before we really even know what DAOs are good for.
Yeah, I love that. And everything you just said there. I think it's some really interesting ideas. I've also wanted to experiment with the DAO for collectively buying art or something like that. People have kind of like warned that some of these things fall into like securities risks. What do you think about that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I try not to think too much about it or say too much about it. Look, I think Nouns has done a really good job with their kind of Cayman Corporation, whatever it's called, the Cayman organization. I think that was really smart and a really good job. I really like what Builder DAO is doing with the UMA. Purple wants to move towards an UMA. It's just, but the true answer is no one knows. None of this stuff, or very few of it, has been tested in court. So does it even matter if you create an UMA? Does it even matter if you have a Cayman's Corp? Like that all remains to be seen. And I would love clear regulation from, and this is like DAOs are global, and that becomes part of the impact whenever you start to talk about kind of the legal implications here. But when you have a DAO with a lot of its members in the United States, it would be great for the US to provide some guidance, not just guidance, because they do a little bit of guidance, but like actual regulation. Like someone tell me what the law is. Because people can tell you what they think the law is, and it all feels a little bit like we're not really sure, but we think this falls under this kind of thing. And if you have an LLC or like no one, so this to me, the onus here is on the U.S. government in providing actual regulations on what you can and can't do.
Yeah, totally.
There's so much here, Chris. There's so much here I could latch on to. Speed running, that's that's a frame I think of a lot with nouns. The other thing is you could almost do like you could be an artist for kind of a, if you think about a company, you know, pre-seed, seed, series A, series B, you could almost be like a pre-seed artist who develops, you know, the basis for an artist brand, and then you could sell it.
Totally.
So then you have like hedge funds scooping up art seedlings. I mean, you could just have so many interesting things happen.
Yeah, I was the other thing I'm really interested in. I think I am seeing maybe more of this stuff. I have a hard time pointing to it, but I was not thinking of this at all when like Purple. I was thinking of nouns and by extension Purple as a public goods project. And now we were going to raise that money almost like a nonprofit, and then we were going to give that money away. And in the case of nouns and Purple, into different things. But I always thought of it as like, oh no, there's no business model here. This is public goods, and a lot of people bought the Purple token with that mission in mind. That like, oh yeah, this is public goods. Now DAOs are great for public goods. There's like kind of a lot of prior info out there about it, and so Purple is, we think of ourselves as a public goods DAO, which sort of means we shy away from funding projects that should be funded or might be funded by venture capital. We like to fund things that maybe have no chance of getting funded, but are useful to the Farcaster ecosystem, like an open source Python library, something like that. But I am highly interested now in nowish DAOs that have revenue and business models, frankly. There's no reason why you couldn't build a software company in one of these structures and then sell that software, and all of the sales go back into the treasury, and then the DAO itself can decide how much the team gets paid and all that stuff. It exists, like in certainly in DeFi, and it exists in the DAO space, but I don't see a lot of that happening in the nowish DAO space. NARS actually has an auction site now. Once it was pioneered that you could actually mint art from the treasury, and so that becomes like a very crypto native way to make revenue and have a business model. And so now I'm also involved in Art House, which is an art DAO, and we totally the whole goal of that DAO is to find artists, collaborate with them, drop them together through our treasury, split the proceeds. But that's like a second way to grow the treasury beyond just selling the tokens. And so, but I think NARS is what they're doing is super cool. I mean, obviously nouns themselves have dropped NFTs. I made a lot of money. Art House is doing it, but there's a lot of opportunities, I think, to think through beyond the token, beyond the perpetuate the meme flywheel, like grow the treasury through other revenue streams. Could be consulting, could be selling a product. Maybe you're an events company. There's all kinds of stuff you can do inside of these DAOs, and maybe we're just starting to see some of those experiments, but yeah, I'd be excited to see a lot more of those and see some like real breakout successes and find other funding mechanisms that aren't necessarily venture capital or bank loans to start businesses.
Amazing. Chris, we've gone a little bit over here, but I want to make sure we can, how can people find you? What's the best way to find you? Is it Twitter or Farcaster, right?
Yeah, so it's certainly Farcaster if you're on it. My handle is ccarella, CCARELLA, and it's the same on Twitter. That's probably the second best place to find me.
Where's do you have a site I can go to where I can see all of your art?
If you click that Zora link, yeah. Yeah, cool.
Amazing work. I hit you up after I saw one of the most recent pieces because I was like, I needed to understand like your technique on that. I think it was the second one up there, a shared experience. When I saw it, I was like, wow, are you painting these? Like, is this digital? And you had told me that you started with painting, but these are all digital, right?
Yeah, I am like sort of, I have a history of painting and I've been painting acrylic on canvas for like 15 years and show at galleries and have a studio, art studio. People used to come through, and then, but I'm a technologist also, and so when NFTs came onto the scene, I was totally interested, and so started to slowly move more and more digital. And now it's like my practice is basically 100% digital. Here you'll see, not here, but in the listing, this wallet here, art.sequel.eth, is like relatively new. Like I did it in September of last year. And so I have lots of stuff, other stuff minted under sequel.eth. But the problem with like being a builder in the space and trying to be an artist in the space, I just have like a ton of stuff minted. Some of it's serious, some of it's not, some of it's me testing a tool. And so I always thought like as my provenance as an artist, it was just too messy to have this one wallet address that like included my experiments and my work and my art. And so I've now like since created this new wallet, and I want it to just be my art provenance wallet, and this is where I'm minting all my art from now on. But yeah, I'm fully digital. I do a lot of stuff on the iPad. I use machine learning. You know, I use a bunch of AI and some of this stuff as well. And so it's sort of a mixture of all the tools that we all have available to us now.
It's great. It's great. I can't wait to see more. I love this piece here. It's really great work.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, it's so great to have you, Chris. Thank you so much for coming on the stream.
Yeah, awesome. It was great to talk to you guys and meet you, actually.
Yeah, great chatting, Chris. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll see you guys around. See you on the internet.
See you later.
Cool. I was about to say cue the theme music, Panda, but I don't think we have any pulled up. So maybe we got to work on that for the next show.
Right. We got to get Woody back on. Although actually, no, he did do theme music for me. I just have to have time to go through it. All right.
All right, guys. Thanks again. Have a good rest of
Catch
your
you
day.
guys later.